Welcome into the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee. I am your host, Josh Newberg. Today is Wednesday, March 19th, and we are talking recruiting. Lots to talk about today. We are going to hit on the Florida Gators, the USC Trojans. We're going to talk a little Texas, and we also have Ole Miss today, so we have a monster show. Let's get to it. Let's talk some Florida Gator football. Last year at this time, Cormani McClain had just stepped on campus in Gainesville, and the expectations were relatively low. But in year two, Zach, it sounds like Cormani McClain's going to make an impact on this Florida Gator roster.
Yeah, he's been one of the players that's had one of the best off seasons so far, Josh. Since he arrived in Gainesville last summer, transferring over from Colorado, he's put on 20 pounds. He weighed 162 when he showed up in Gainesville, and he's 182 now. But despite that added weight, I think maybe one of the most impressive stats about him is that he's gotten a whole mile per hour faster. Florida tracks that with their strength and conditioning staff, and he was running 22 miles an hour when he arrived from Colorado. Now he's clocking 23 miles an hour, up a whole one. And that's kind of like an exclusive club for the Gators. If you can run 23 miles per hour, I think there's only 5 or 6 guys on the team that can do that. So Cormani is one of the fastest players on Florida's roster, despite adding 20 pounds over the past year. He's a guy that arrived in Gainesville and wasn't on scholarship. He had to earn it. He's done that. He's on scholarship now. And it's really helped him translate to the football field. He's just looked a lot better. He looks like he belongs in the starting lineup for Florida, and really big for them because they have a need at cornerback.
Gator insider Zach Albaverdi here with Gators Online. We appreciate you stopping by. Zach, there was a lot of rumors with Cormani that he wasn't attending practices, that he wasn't attending school. Has that continued, or has he cleaned that up as well?
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that I think he tackled early on after transferring from Florida was, showing up to things on time, figuring out Florida's schedule, getting in a routine. All this was new for him and not something that he maybe had as structured at Colorado. So there were some growing pains, but I do know that's talking from some of Florida's coaches and people inside the program. He's been completely turned the corner with that. He's been on top of his school. He's been on top of meetings. He shows up to everything with a great attitude, and he's just bought in to Florida. I think that putting in all that work last year that he did to kind of appease the coaches and do the things that he needed to do, and then being able to see the rewards on the field. Remember, he got in against Kentucky, had the pick 6. He made his first career start against Texas. So he got some opportunities, and I think that gave him even more reason to stay on that path.
So what's Cormani doing this spring? Is he battling for a starting position?
100%. 100%. I think Devin Moore is a guy that you can pencil in as one of the starters for Florida. But they lost Jason Marshall Jr. Dijon Johnson, who was another guy that started for them last year, is out this spring. So that's creating an opportunity for Cormani to get all the reps with the ones. They brought in Michael Caraway, a transfer from Southern Miss as well, who's contending for some playing time. But again, man, they're raving about Cormani in spring ball, and he looks like he belongs on the field with the Gators.
Well, that's great news, as Cormani McClain was one of the best corners coming out. He hasn't quite lived up to the hype, but this year it sounds like he's going to have an opportunity to do so. Also, while we're on the spring practice, I wanted to know, any other former 5-stars creating a buzz out there on the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to point to the 2 receivers that Florida added. Vernell Brown III, who was an on-3 industry 5-star, as well as Dallas Wilson, who was a 5-star for the majority of the cycle. Both those guys have stood out at the receiver spot. Vernell Brown is a guy that came in and mentioned Cormani McClain's weight. Vernell Brown was underweight as well. He's already put on, I want to say, I think 11 pounds since he enrolled in January. I think he's around the 175 range now. Florida feels like they can get him up to 180, and he's going to be able to contribute as a freshman. He might even be involved on punt return because he's that special back there. And then Dallas Wilson, he doesn't have any problems with his size. 6'3", 205 pounds. Tyler Miles, Florida strength and conditioning coach, described him as a mutant. He does not look like a freshman out there. And I know that, he was kind of a late arrival for the Gators. And I reported this at Gators Online, but that first week that he showed up and went through some of the player one run workouts, there was a lot of buzz in the building for people that were watching him run routes. And look, the guy is a first round talent, and he's obviously going to have to get the playbook down, adjust to the college game. But he's got all the talent to come in and also contribute for Florida. And I think that he and J. Michael Sturdivant will be quite the 1-2 punch at that X position for Florida.
Yeah, there's just a lot of buzz right now around this Florida Gator program, especially on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of that is due to DJ Lagway. We love covering him here on the Inside Scoop, one of the best quarterbacks to come out of that class. Now he's heading into year 2, only his first year taking over as the full-time starter, but it kind of feels like there's a win now mentality around this program. Do you get that sense?
100%. I think that coming off of the 8-4 season and knowing that all the pieces that Florida has coming back on offense, they feel like they've got the talent to win. They feel like they've got the talent to go make a college football playoff, to compete for the SEC championship. And you're right, Josh, it does start with DJ Lagway. So many teams around the country are trying to figure out who their starting quarterback is going to be this offseason. Florida doesn't have that problem. And even though he is limited this spring, he's still out there on the practice field. He's a presence in the building. He's a guy that's kind of taken that leadership role at really ever since Graham Mertz went down last year. And I think, to your point, you have DJ Lagway behind center. You need to win now. You need to take advantage of this window when you have number 2 in Gainesville. And I think that they've been able to do that, kind of retaining their roster, adding some pieces from the portal. And, I think they got to get healthy on defense. But, again, there's a lot to like on that offensive side of the ball.
All right, let's wrap it up with this. It's a recruiting show. Who's a former, highly thought after recruit that maybe hasn't caught on yet in Gainesville that you think this season is going to break out? On3 is honored to announce the next stop of the Next Greatest Generation Tour at Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, California. In partnership with the Army National Guard, we are proud to recognize Mater Dei High School as a Team of the Year for their unparalleled excellence on the field and their incredible impact on the sport. With 12 state championships, including their most recent in 2024, Mater Dei has set the gold standard for high school football. Over the past decade, no program has achieved greater success as the Monarchs hold the best record in the nation during that span. Their rich tradition of developing elite talent is unmatched, as Mater Dei remains the only high school to produce 3 Heisman Trophy winners, a testament to the program's ability to cultivate greatness. Year after year, the Monarchs dominate the national stage, consistently ranking number 1 in the On3 high school rankings. Their success is built on a foundation of values that define the next greatest generation. In addition to honoring Mater Dei on Friday, we will also feature a live commitment from 2026 safety CJ Lavender, broadcasting live at 3 p.m. Eastern from the Army National Guard Activation Zone at the campus of Mater Dei. Please join us in congratulating Mater Dei High School on this well-deserved honor. We look forward to celebrating the Monarchs this Friday as part of the Next Greatest Generation Tour.
Yeah, I think that it probably starts with Cormani McClain, honestly.
It's a good one.
We opened the show with him. I think that he's a guy that has a chance to have a breakout year. There's an opportunity for him, and I think that he really just needed to get in a structured environment, get the kind of coaching, get the kind of development that he's needed. But the talent is there, and I think that there's nobody that has doubted that before. Another guy that I would point to is maybe a bit of a sleeper, but I think a guy that's going to contribute for Florida a lot. He wasn't too highly rated, but I do think that maybe Florida fans are counting him out, and that's Jaden Robinson, the linebacker out of Columbia. A local prospect. Yeah. There's a lot of buzz and a lot of talent at that linebacker spot that the Gators have. Obviously, Miles Graham is coming in. I think he probably will be a starter this year. You get Pup Howard back. Aaron Childs is also in that room. You added Ty Jackson. There's a lot of big names, and maybe Jaden Robinson isn't the biggest one, but he's a guy that started the last, I think, 4 or 5 games for Florida to end the season at middle linebacker. He's been a consistent player, and I think with Pup Howard out this spring, he's kind of taken the charge at that middle linebacker spot, and I think that he's going to be an important player for Florida on defense.
All right, Gator fans, talk to us. It's an exciting off season. Are you buying the hype around the resurgence of former five-star Cormani McClain? Let us know what your expectations are for the former five-star. Let's talk some USC Trojans recruiting, as USC has the #1 class in America, but they're also racking up the commitments. They have 15 right now. So got Scott Schrader on. Scott, how has USC gotten off to such a hot start this offseason?
I think it kind of started last summer, last late spring, last summer when they really, especially Doug Belk, with the defensive backs, they really started to focus on those guys and make sure that they were over on campus often. And they would have during June, during the camp season, they had the guys over there working out with individually. And I think that those early commitments were the result of just kind of pivoting away from relying on recruiting out of state to making sure they kept the top in-state guys there. So I think it started with, there was a concerted effort to make sure that they kept, the 2026 recruiting class in Southern California is exceptionally strong this year, to next year as well. And I think coupled with that approach that they had been basically following for about a year now, the addition of Chad Bowden, the general manager, has really been a game changer. The way kids are talking about USC in Southern California collectively, I have not heard in 10 plus years. And maybe we heard it a year here late in the process, a year there late in the process, or whatever it might be. But this is the first time that the kids are talking about how they look forward to going back to USC, spending time with this coaching staff. So give the coaching staff a lot of credit. Chad Bowden has really kind of changed things up. I think it's they are putting effort into getting these guys to commit, and I think sign NIL deals, or at least they're talking money right now. So I think there's a lot of combinations that have gone into this fast start, but a lot of it goes back to the coaching staff and the support staff.
All right, Scott Schrader here, an insider at We Are SC. USC fans, do me a favor, hit subscribe. We're looking at 15 commitments. How many more do you think the Trojans can take in this cycle? And with 4 commitments in 4 days, we saw USC jump into that #1 spot. Who do you think could be the next to jump on board?
Right now, if I had to pick a guy that is the most likely to commit next, would probably be Deshaun Rideau, running back from Oaks Christian, he's another local kid. Oaks Christian is about 40 minutes away from USC. He's been on campus probably as much as anybody over the last year. He will be back multiple times during the springtime. So I'd probably put him there. We've got guys like Sam Utu, an offensive lineman from Orange Lutheran, another local school. And there's a few other commitments that have been made as well. But if we're just talking about Southern California, Deshaun Rideau is probably the most likely.
And how many do you think they're going to take in this class?
Chad Bowden, the GM, said it's going to be the largest high school recruiting class they've taken ever. So I know when Lane Kiffin first came in, USC was put on sanctions, and they knew they were going to have some scholarship limitations. They kind of jerry-rigged their how they brought guys in, a lot of early enrollees so they could take them back to the previous class, some gray shirts and so on. I think it was about 37 guys they brought in. Some of those were junior college kids, so it wouldn't be surprising at all if they took 35 or more.
Wow. That would be a absolute monster class. To think that there could still be 20 more commitments left for USC. That's crazy. Yeah. We've been talking a little bit about quarterback ever since they flipped Jonas Williams from Oregon. That was huge. But, Scott, I'm reading on We Are SC. USC wants to take 2 quarterbacks this cycle, and Ryder Lyons, the 5-star out of California, is another target of theirs. Do you think that they could pull it off, landing 2 elite quarterbacks this cycle?
Yeah, I do think that they could pull it off. The one item we should note is that Ryder it will be taking a Mormon mission after high school, and really is not going to enroll until 2027. So he is really a 2027 prospect as far as USC and some of these other schools are looking at him. But yeah, I think it's still yet to be determined. He's got official visits set to USC, Oregon, and BYU. I think all 3 schools have a legit shot. He loves Lincoln Riley. He loves Will Stein. I haven't really talked to him much about what's going on at BYU, except his father did play there, I believe. So there's a lot going on with those three schools. The one thing that I keep hearing though is that his brother Walker Lyons is really happy at USC. They're paying him well apparently, and they really do look at the after football aspect that USC can offer these kids, and that's one of those choices. You either choose to use that or not, and there are still some guys, believe it or not, that do look at that stuff.
All right, Scott, let's wrap it up. Any other big names USC fans are anticipating to be on campus this spring?
Yeah, they're gonna have. I mean, the visitor list is crazy large. We can start with just the official visits that will be happening in June, and that number is gonna be probably in the 60 range, which will be the largest ever. But today they have Kenyi Pepe, 5-star. Well, I don't know what we have him ranked, but he's a 4-star, I think, in the industry rankings. Offensive tackle from IMG Academy. He's an LA kid, so he's basically home right now for spring break. But they're gonna have guys coming every week during spring practices, and then they're gonna have a huge event that's gonna come on April 26th, which will be the last day of spring practices. And I can just list off the the names of those guys if you want me to, but it's going to be an extremely large group of visitors. Every week I keep learning about new ones. So it might be worthwhile here, maybe next week or so, just to basically just talk about some of the visitors who are going to be coming.
Yeah, we will.
April. Yeah, there's going to be a lot, and they're rolling in right now, but it really starts hitting hard when April rolls around.
All right, USC fans, you're sitting with the number 1 class in America right now. What do you think the Trojans need to do to finish with the number 1 class in America? Talk to Scott and I in the comments section below. Let's talk some Texas Longhorn football. I want to find out in this video what former 5-star is about to break out in 2025. Also, a 3-star that is expected to outplay his ranking. For this video, I got On3 National Scout Cody Belair. Cody, who is your 5-star that's going to break out this season?
Yeah, Josh, Texas fans are coming off a dominant 2024 season that had them in the college football playoff, obviously, and a lot of the offensive success came on the ground. Even though at the beginning of last year, there was a point where Texas fans didn't even know who was going to be running the football with the amount of injuries that were beating them up in the running back room in Austin. But going into this 2025 season, I have former 5-star running back CJ Baxter bouncing back from last year's season-ending injury and becoming the bell cow that Texas fans have been waiting for ever since he was splitting carries with Jonathan Brooks his freshman year. And yes, I would say Baxter technically broke onto the scene as a true freshman. And, they have some guy named Arch Manning. I believe that's going to be the starter this year. But this year's the year where we finally get to see CJ Baxter get the bulk of the workload. This is the year where we get to see the former 5-star get the majority of touches and become a true every down back that should be getting nearly 20 carries a game for this Longhorn offense. Plus, we know he can be an asset in the passing game. So this is someone that should barely even be on the sidelines as long as he's healthy. And he will hopefully look like the 5-star that we saw flashes from early on in his career.
Yeah, I think Texas is going to get some return on him. I remember that recruitment very well. Cedric Baxter, early on, committed to Florida State, opens it back up, commits to Texas. The Gators make a run at him late, but Texas is able to hold on. Now I think this is the year that we see a whole lot of Cedric Baxter. All right, Cody, give me a former 3-star recruit that you expect to outplay that ranking this season.
Yeah, this next player is someone I have no problem giving us a little self-pat on the back here because the former 3-star prospect to break out for Texas next season was considered an industry 3-star in the 2023 recruiting cycle, but he finished as a 4-star and top 200 player for us at On3, and that would be none other than offensive tackle Trevor Gooseby, who burst onto the scene last year filling in for the injured Kelvin Banks, who could hear his name called quite early in next month's NFL draft. But it was Gooseby who dominated against a ridiculously strong Texas A&M defensive front after Banks went down early in the first quarter. playing over 70 snaps at tackle, shutting down a really strong Aggies pass rushing unit. So now that he'll be given the chance to own his role as the starting left tackle, he'll be preparing this offseason if he's the starter. He'll get his body right like he's the starter, and he'll be getting extraordinarily valuable first-team practice reps against some of the top edge defenders in the country in Colin Simmons and Trey Moore. So I believe that that's going to pay big dividends for this Texas Longhorns offense in 2025.
All right, Texas fans, talk to Cody and I. Who is your breakout player in 2025? Let us know. Let's talk some Ole Miss recruiting. Now, the Rebels were back at practice. Spring ball started this week, and recruits were on campus. So, Billy Embody, who were some of the most important recruits we saw in Oxford for that first day of spring practice?
Well, the Rebels continue to have one of the top defensive lines in college football, and they do that by recruiting and restocking the interior. And one guy that they got back to campus, an Ole Miss legacy, Deuce Gerald's, out of the Peach State, 4-star prospect. He's fresh off a visit to Clemson, and Ohio State continues to press for him as well. But when you look at this recruitment, this is one that Ole Miss can't lose. You know, his dad played center for the Rebels back in the day, and was there decked out in his Ole Miss gear. So you can tell a lot of ties there to Oxford and the Rebels with that family. And Deuce has been no stranger to campus. He's been around quite a bit. He was already here earlier this year. He's taken in games. He's been a constant on campus. So for Randall Joyner and the defensive line group to get Deuce Gerald's over the competition that they have for him would be massive. But they also had a flip target on campus, Jordan Carter, Texas A&M commitment from this fall. He's an edge prospect, once again, out of the Peach State, and a 4-star one, and a really, really impressive looking prospect. I think he can grow into a 3 technique. But Ole Miss hosted him. He's expected to be at Texas A&M this weekend as well. So the Aggies are looking to hold on to him. But it wasn't his first trip either. He was at Ole Miss last summer. So getting back around the program with another state of Georgia prospect in Deuce Gerald's. They were hanging out and watching Randall Joyner and that staff go to work with that defensive line. So those were 2 big ones, but then they weren't done. They had 4-star quarterback Gavin Sidwar on campus out of Pennsylvania. Syracuse is leading the way with Fran Brown doing a nice job there, and also kind of that Northeast tie there with Pennsylvania and kind of a little bit more closer to home. But he enjoyed it. He plans to get back for an unofficial visit and an official visit potentially, but he's got Syracuse there, Missouri, UCLA, and others. And then finally, a little bit of a sleeper, Caden Smith from the state of Alabama. He's a multi-sport prospect who plays basketball, baseball, also, of course, plays football, which is where Ole Miss is recruiting him at the wide receiver position. And he named Ole Miss his leader. He's got official visits set to Liberty and Stanford this summer already.
All right, well, exciting times in Oxford as spring ball is here. Recruiting is heating up. Ole Miss fans, do me a favor right now. Hit subscribe. We're hanging out here with Billy Embody of OM Spirit. Billy, I know it's early in the cycle, especially for Lane Kiffin quarterback recruiting, but who is emerging early at the quarterback position? Who are some of the top names for Lane Kiffin's QB board?
Yeah, for Lane Kiffin, this is a class that they really need to sign 2 quarterbacks in, after not taking a 2025 quarterback last cycle. And when you look at that group that they've got on campus, earlier this year, Landon Duckworth, 4-star, top 100, top 10 quarterback out of Jackson, Alabama, is emerging as the top target and also the most realistic target that they can get. They've been on Jared Curtis, but that one has turned into Oregon and Georgia, it appears. And Ryder Lyons, another 5-star that they're after in the 2027 class, with him taking that mission trip, is somebody who will graduate high school in 26. He's expected on campus soon. But Landon Duckworth is that top target. He was already at Ole Miss earlier this year, and that visit really set the bar high. But Georgia, South Carolina, Florida State, there's a bunch of programs that are coming after him. And how can you not like him with his basketball pedigree as well as his dual threat ability out there on the field for Jackson? So Ole Miss is really pushing for Landon Duckworth. I expect him to get back at some point for a visit this spring, but he already has his last official visit locked in to Ole Miss for June 20th, and he'll be along on that trip with another quarterback, and that's Reese Wise. And he's my pick right now to, as far as Landon Duckworth and Reese Wise, be that 2 quarterback class if I had to project it right now. And Reese Wise is out of Austin Westlake. He's picked up some big offers. He's a part of that long pedigree of quarterbacks that get recruited at a high level out of Westlake. And he picked up his offer earlier this year on a visit to Oxford and really likes what Lane Kiffin and his staff bring to the table. So wouldn't shock me if those are the two guys that by the end of the summer are on board in the quarterback room.
Yeah, like you said, really important cycle at the quarterback position. Before I let you go, I want to talk about the wide receiver position. Last year, Caleb Cunningham looked like he was about to leave the state of Mississippi for Alabama. Lane Kiffin with that late flip to keep the elite wide receiver in state. This year, it's Tristan Keys. He's the number 1 ranked wide receiver in America. It sounds like he's trending to Tennessee, but we know these recruitments are long, they're winding, and Ole Miss isn't going to go down without a fight. How do you see this Tristan Keys recruitment playing out for Ole Miss right now? Inside Scoop fans, listen up. Finding last-minute tickets to the biggest college basketball tournament can be a nightmare, so don't miss the excitement of your favorite team making the finals or a great story of a sleeper making a deep run into the tourney. See it all in person with the help of Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the big-time matchups. Game Time app is great, it's easy to use, and it works in any city with any team, and you get the best price guaranteed. Do not stress over getting into your favorite team's game anymore. There's only so many big games, and you need to get these tickets at the best prices. Game Time is the best place for last-minute ticket deals. I love the seat view function. It's so cool. You get to see a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy it. Now, here's what we're going to do. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use redeem code ON3, that's ON, the number 3, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute ticket deals, lowest price guarantee.
It's funny we talk about him this week because I think he's getting close to making a return trip to Oxford. They're going to catch spring practice at some point from what we've heard. And like you said, Tristan Keys, number 1 wide receiver in the country. Ole Miss has done well with the top ranked prospect in Mississippi under Lane Kiffin the last few years. Jace Matthews is also a highly ranked wide receiver that they're after in the state of Mississippi. Yeah. But I think you kind of alluded to it with the winding recruitment. These Mississippi prospects can be that sometimes. They get really interesting down the stretch, and Lane Kiffin and his staff are going to do everything in their power to try and keep Tristan Keys in state. There's a couple of prospects like that they're going to work and kind of appear to be maybe a little bit behind, so to speak, right now. But whether it's Alabama or Tennessee or some of these other high-profile programs that have hosted or going to host Tristan Keys, the competition is stiff. But if he makes a return visit to Oxford very soon, that is something to watch, because Caleb was kind of talking up Ole Miss a little bit more around this time of year. But right now, Tristan Keys kind of taking a more quieter approach with the Rebels in terms of just his interviews and things like that. But if he gets back to campus here really soon, which I expect he will, that'll kind of continue to keep them in mind for this recruitment, I would imagine.
Yep. Well, Billy Embody with OM Spirit, thank you for dropping by the Inside Scoop. We love talking a little Ole Miss recruiting after the first day of spring practice.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.